What is up, everybody? Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with former Fighting Irish linebacker and captain Mike Goolsby. We're back with the Mike Goolsby Show. It's been about 7 weeks or so since we had our last Mike Goolsby Show. So Mike hit me up this morning, was like, yo, let's do a show. We've been trying to get one together here and worked out great. My wife's out of town, so this is perfect. Mr. Goolsby, how are you doing?
I'm good, buddy. It's great to see you. Yeah, we tried to get something going early last week, get a pot up, and then I think you had a commitment forthcoming that evening, and just
It was a busy week
yeah,
last week. Yeah.
yeah.
Pretty, yeah.
No, it's good to be back. It's we're in the throes of summer. It's 100 plus degrees here in Omaha. We got ND baseball coming to town. It's a great time to be an Irish fan for sure.
It really is. I saw a graphic or a tweet recently about Notre Dame being the only school in the country that made March Madness, played in a New Year's Six bowl game, and made the College World Series. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool. It's a very
yeah.
selective kind of thing. Like I'm sure if you, well, maybe not that selective, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
No, yeah, you could sprinkle in some other sports, women's basketball. I know our fencing team is unreal. They
Yeah.
never get any love. But yeah, it's a great school, and I know we want to talk about Coach Freeman's comments about the old Buckeyes in terms of their academic standards, class attendance, etc. So, and we touched on this before on the show, Mike, like if there was a kind of a laissez-faire college sports fan jump on board the Notre Dame bandwagon, um, because these kids that are having success on the field, on the court, what have you, they're putting in the work in the classroom as well. So all that success that Notre Dame's enjoying in the athletic arena, off the field, they're doing things the right way as well. And when you contrast that to an Ohio State, for example, that isn't always the case.
Yeah. We'll
So
dive into.
easy program to root for. Sorry, buddy.
You think Notre Dame's the easy program to root for? The country
I
doesn't feel
think
that
that
way.
well, we talked about this too. I do think that maybe the last 15 or so years, I think that the way Notre Dame has chosen to brand itself, it's been a little bit of a holier than thou type approach to things. I think bringing in Coach Freeman, it's a little bit more of a down to earth approach, and I think it's reminiscent of like a Holtz type personality where Holtz kind of had a blue collar kind of a grassroots. It was more relatable, and I think we're kind of starting to get back to that, and it's the end result should be a team that's or a program that's easier to
Okay.
pull for. More relatable.
Okay. I like it. We'll dive into some of Freeman's comments here in just a moment. First, want to make sure you guys who are watching us live on YouTube, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. If you're listening or if you're watching back, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this as well. Make sure if you're listening via podcast, subscribe to our podcast wherever you get that. Yeah, I don't know what other housekeeping items I usually go. $1 for 1 year premium access at blueandgold.com. Follow us on Twitter, BGI News, all that kind of good crap. So typically for these shows, whether it's our Wednesday night show or the Goolsby show or whatever, we'll have some topics lined up, a little bit of not much of a script, but we have an idea of what we're talking about. This one, we have like two things that we'll just kind of like. This one is very. We're just going with the flow. So definitely, if you have a super chat, drop it, and we'll get to your question right away. If you have any questions, if you're with us live, drop them in the comments. I'll pick some of my favorites, and we'll get to them with Mr. Goolsby. But I would say we have like three things to kind of that we maybe four that we're kind of we'll definitely roughly go over. The first I want to pull up here, and Mike touched on it, is this. Marcus Freeman has not been shy about his love for Notre Dame overtaking his love for Ohio State, basically. I mean, I think that's fair to say. So let me pull this up. This is 11warriors.com, a pretty good Ohio State site. I don't know if this is taking a shot, but Here's the headline, quote, take some classes online, show up for your appointments, about Ohio State football. So let me read an excerpt of this article, okay? When discussing the academics at Notre Dame in an interview with CBS Sports, Freeman took an apparent shot at the academic rigor for an Ohio State football player, suggesting that if a player didn't want to go to class, he could just take some online classes, show up for your appointments. And here is the quote. I'm not saying from top to bottom, but the majority of our kids, I want to say this is the right way, are pushed to learn, and their study habits are formulated every day. You can't cheat academics at Notre Dame. Um, and then he said, you don't go to class, referring to Ohio State. Okay, take some online classes, show up for your appointments at Notre Dame. You're forced every day to go to class. So I don't know if he's really taking a direct shot at Ohio State. He did not say at Ohio State, you're there's no classes, you're just, you're riding easy here. But I can see where Ohio State fans can, be a little salty at Marcus Freeman right now, because it's not like it's the first time he's made it very clear that I like it. I don't remember the quote, Mike, but he's basically said, "I wish I would have chose Notre Dame if I were a recruit again." So what do you think about all this?
Yeah, maybe it's a nuanced shot in terms of shots fired. Maybe this one's a little bit nuanced. I had a lot of thoughts about this. Coach Freeman making that comment is somewhat coming off of the heels of that little cat fight between Saban and Jimbo, and all the drama that kind of ensued there. So, two premier programs. Let's not call Texas A&M premier, but if their recruiting classes land and produce, then they're on their way. So that was kind of fun. This is the off season, Mike. We're trying to find topics to kind of spitball here between you and I. So you're looking for things to talk about. And Marcus Freeman gives us a nice meaty sandwich to chew on here. So I'm appreciative of that, but it kind of gets Notre Dame talking, and back into that kind of conversation between like Saban and Jimbo. Well, this is Notre Dame. They're their new head coach, ex coach over at Ohio State, ex player at Ohio State. So it's a talking point. Now, I've said on this show before half a dozen times that kids at other premier marquee schools don't go to class. And I believe that to be true based off of my experience and working with kids that have gone on to other schools, things that I've heard. So it's nice to get some confirmation from Coach Freeman that yes, this is in fact the case. Now, going to class, you can interpret that whichever way you want. But as an ex-player, yeah, we had to go to class. I didn't like the choice of words in terms of him saying Notre Dame players are forced to go to class. I think that carries a little bit of a negative connotation, but I see what he means. I think it's a little bit of quasi bulletin board material for a week one matchup in Columbus. I think that's fun. But I think at the core of it, Mike, Coach Freeman's a competitor. And he's not afraid to stick his neck out for his team. And I love to see it. I love to see it.
Hmm.
And the other element to it, and I've had this conversation before I even got involved with Notre Dame coverage and working alongside yourself. Ohio State fans are the worst, right? They're the worst. In my experience, they're the worst. Um, and I've had conversations at bars. I like to mix it up, needle people a little bit. And it'd be like, what are you rooting for? Like, as an Ohio State fan, you got that sweet O tattoo on your arm, even though you never went to school there, whatever is the case. Like, what are you rooting for? And exploitation is always a strong word to me. But what are your graduation rates? 40, 50% on a good year? So all these kids, they sign 18, 20, 22 kids coming out of high school. Kids try and use Ohio State as a springboard to get to the NFL. When it doesn't work out for 85% of them, what are those kids left with? So you're not bettering you're not bettering men in like the grand scheme of things, and which goes back to what the first things I said on the show today, Mike. It's things like that. What Coach Freeman's talking about is as big of a reason to root Notre Dame football and Notre Dame athletics as anything. It's kids come into the program and they leave much more polished, much more developed, much more prepared for the rest of their life. And it's not just a sole focus on ball.
Yeah, a couple things. I do think they're like Ohio State people getting upset about this. I think they're putting words into Freeman's mouth. He did not call out Ohio State. I mean, you just kind of have to read in between the lines a little bit. So,
Yeah,
if he
it's
said
nuanced. It's nuanced.
if it is like if he would have said Ohio State, you don't go to class there, that's huge bulletin board material. But like if they took that quote that we had up on the screen for YouTube audience, there's the bracket, which in journalism, if you're quoting somebody, you add the bracket to add context, but that's the writer doing that and not the actual, person being quoted. So that's the thing. And then I did find that an article about also on 11 Warriors, Freeman saying about thank God I did not make the wrong decision twice about picking Ohio State over Notre Dame. I don't know if
I
it
love
is.
it.
I
I'm
don't
telling
think
you, I
it's
love it,
said
Mike.
in this article, but Ohio State's DC last year, Kerry Coombs, I think that was the name. He got let go, and they were looking for a defensive coordinator this offseason. You know who they wanted? They wanted Marcus
Sure.
Freeman to come home, and yeah, that's Freeman.
Yeah, Freeman hasn't
Putting them down.
done anything. He hasn't done anything outside of we lost the bowl game, which right is his first game, but he hasn't done anything wrong. I mean, even him, greeting the Notre Dame baseball team after they made it to the World Series, like just all these little things that the guy consistently does. And you almost think like he's got a clone or something. Like, how is he everywhere? And I think Ashton had a tweet like the man is everywhere. So I think this is a little segue because I do know you want to talk about CJ Carr. And before we kind of put a pin in this Ohio State Freeman passive aggressive, nuanced kind of slight, anytime we can rile up a Michigan fan base or anytime we can rile up an Ohio State fan base, the fact that Ohio State thinks that they're talking about him, they're being a little bit sensitive, you love it, right? Because it bothers them, right? So there's going to be we stole CJ Carr away from Michigan, right? We didn't want him anyways, but at the core it bothers them because that the same way that Michigan fans wanted CJ Carr is the same way that Ohio State fans wanted Freeman to come back and be their DC. And Freeman's just kind of turning that knife tactfully. He's kind of turning that knife, and I'm here for it. Love to see it.
Okay. As a former Notre Dame player, it's got you got to be happy that Notre Dame landed an elite quarterback, obviously. But when you land someone with last name Carr, it's got to make it a little bit sweeter. Now, for you, I believe the two programs, you're going to have to mistake me if I'm wrong here, the two programs you hated the most were Michigan State and Boston College, right?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. Depends on the day, dude. I mean, there's a rotation of hate.
Okay,
But
give
no,
it
I'm
to me.
saying,
Give it
yeah,
to me.
that's fair to say. Yeah, Boston College would probably be my number one. And again, USC is a strong rivalry, but I respected USC.
Okay.
I respected them. Yeah, Michigan, I didn't respect Michigan. I always felt, and I'd say the same thing about Lloyd Carr. I felt like people held college football as a whole holds Michigan in a higher regard than they should. Um, and as a player, just watching them, I'm like, they ain't all that. They're just not. So that always kind of bothered me. So I wouldn't say I hated Michigan, but I didn't respect Michigan the way that you did like a USC back when I was playing. So and to just jumping into CJ Carr, it's like, oh my goodness, he's Lloyd Carr's grandson. So we went on a visit to Michigan when I was being recruited, and Michigan had offered me, and I can remember being in Coach Carr's office rather, and I didn't like the guy. And let's not conflate Lloyd Carr with like Nick Saban. Just because he was there for 20 plus years or whatever, he wasn't like this legend. He's not Bo Schembechler. Like he's just not. Let's not make him that. So I understand it's fun to talk about, but um,
Do you want to know what Lloyd Carr is though? He is a part of the family now.
yeah.
I mean, there he is. He's rocking his Notre Dame hat. So, um,
When I first saw that picture, Mike, I thought that was CJ's grandma. I didn't realize that was actually Lloyd.
okay.
Anyways,
Yeah. Well, let's
I
talk
think I
about.
texted you and Tim Hyde about that. Yeah, let's talk about CJ the
Oh
player.
well, man. When you and Tim text me, man, I love you guys both. I have that conversation on mute or do not disturb, whatever it's called, because it'll just be like 50 messages, and I ain't nobody got time for that.
Oh yeah, if you wind Tim up,
Oh,
get
Tim,
out of the way.
Tim. Oh man, Tim loves texting, man. And Tim's the kind of guy who Tim Hyde or another one of our football analysts. He sends each text as its own thought, or each thought is its own text, I should say. So you'll get like 15. So every time I ever text Tim, I wait about 5 minutes to respond to him back because I know that he's going to send me like 10 messages. So might as well just wait till they're all done. Okay, well let's pop on CJ's sophomore film, and you tell me what you think, Mike. I'm assuming you've been able to watch this a couple times. So what'd you think?
Yeah, he's a real easy thrower. Another one of these kids where he'll continue to grow height wise, but he can make all the throws and he makes all the throws look easy. Um, and similar to your boy Angeli, he's probably a little bit slept on in terms of his athleticism. Most importantly, at the younger stages of his development, again, he's a sophomore here. If we get a chance to see him move around and scramble a little bit, he's always looking to throw first. Um, I think when you break down high school quarterbacks in terms of their highlights, some of the scrambles are sexy, right? But I would much rather have an accurate, smart decision maker that's got a live arm than more of a pure athlete scrambler type. So he's very much refined for being as young as he is, and that shouldn't be a surprise given his background and the family that he comes from. And it's nice, Mike. You may have to explain to me and maybe our audience in terms of his like this is a great play. See again,
This is
eyes
amazing.
downfield. I mean, he could have taken off 2 or 3 times on this particular play, but he
CJ,
keeps the eyes
CJ, if
downfield.
you're watching, this should have been your first play of your tape, man. Just to let you know, buddy.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. So even there, he would most quarterbacks would have slipped out and taken off, picked up a block from that receiver, and he distributes the ball.
Mike, do you see
And
this
you
angle
would
right
think,
here?
Mike, can I just, Mike, real quick?
Yeah.
You would think too, like, because if he's going to be the class of 2024, you have a much better sense of this than I do as you speak to more young kids, more recruits. But if I'm a wide receiver, this kid's going to give me more opportunities to catch balls in terms of then him being dynamic as a runner because you can watch him and you could just it's crystallized that he's looking to get the ball to his playmakers as opposed to picking up 50 yards extra rushing a game. That's 5 more catches that are up for grabs potentially as a receiver. I'm sorry, Mike, you were going to say something.
I was just gonna make a small comment on the. I think all these high schools need to have a camera in the end zone. I mean, just having those throws. Let me see if I can pull it up. Just like these throws where you're looking from behind the quarterback, like this one. Again, sorry for podcast audience. You just have to watch this on. I mean, you can see the cover. You can read it. I mean, look at that dime there. I mean, it's yeah. I like that angle. That was all I was gonna say.
No, so what you're talking about, so this is football 101. What we're watching now, what you traditionally watch, that's a wide copy, and then that end zone is a tight copy. And I got a quick story.
Story time.
When I came out of high school, we didn't have it's high school football. I had never seen a tight copy before I got to Notre Dame. I'd never seen an end zone copy. And Matt Lavecchio, he was in my class, my recruiting class,
That's a
he's playing as a true
Roman Catholic kid,
freshman.
right?
Correct. Also, the home of Steve Angeli. So there's some history there. So Matt Lavecchio is watching film on his own on the tight copy, and I had never seen that before, where all these people are crossing and there's so many moving parts. Now, granted, forgive me, I'm a 17-year-old kid watching this, and I'm like, I could never pull the trigger and just let that ball fly because there's just so much traffic. It's like a six-way intersection. So yes, I completely agree with you. Even work that into like the broadcast in some capacity, so that because we all say when we're watching it on the watching a game from TV, oh, he was open. Well, was he really? You'll never know unless you can see that tight copy.
I'm about to lose my mind right now because this is something I'm so fired up about. Is I think NBC a couple
Dig,
years ago.
Mike, dig.
Oh, I think NBC a couple years ago tried to do some kind of different camera angle where they did build that in, where you could watch behind. And all Notre Dame fans lost their minds, and they hated it. They absolutely hated it. And I'm like, this is how you see real football. Like this is, I mean, everyone wants to criticize the quarterbacks, right? I mean, like Notre Dame loses, everyone's blaming Ian Book, for 3 years. But when you actually get to look behind him with that end zone camera, you get to see what he sees, and if people really open, or if he was missing a ton of open guys, the broadcast angle sucks. I mean, you just get to see 20 players. Maybe you don't get to see a deep safety or something, but it sucks. I don't like it at all. It's just the best for a casual fan. But like, if you like, I mean, you can see a run play develop. You can see
Totally.
guys are open or not.
There's no hiding. There's especially, I mean, as a linebacker, when you talk about run fits and things, it becomes glaringly obvious in terms of who screwed up on a given. If they break a 20-yard run, watch that back in the tight copy. You can't miss it. So I'm in
I
complete
mean, if
agreement. But
if we had the tight copy to watch on NBC, can you imagine how much more crap Kane Madden would have gotten?
shoot, dude, stop you. Yeah, let's not, Mike. If we keep doing this podcast, I don't want to hear that name anymore. I was thinking about him. I swear to you, man, I was thinking about him last night because I'm looking at
Of
this
course you
recruiting
were.
class and it's like, oh, it's just like you're looking at these recruits and the types of kids we're signing on the offensive line. We might take six this 2023 cycle, and it's like how in God's green earth did we not have somebody better waiting in the wings? It's just it's
Do you
incomprehensible to
do
me.
you
I
think
can't comprehend it.
do you think that there was no one better behind him, or do you think it was the Notre Dame coaches being too stubborn to bench him? Combination.
I think it was I think it was yeah, I think Coach Kelly, and we can kind of, this might sort of bleed back into talking about CJ Carr, but I think Coach Kelly was very hesitant and super risk averse. He's like, at least I know what I got. Like, yeah, he's going to get beat like a drum 3, 4 times a game, but I'll deal with it versus maybe he maybe just has a mental error on a given play like a younger kid might have. So a younger kid might have more physical ability, but there might be a higher likelihood that he's going to screw up. 6, 7, he won't have any mental errors. So it's just a different take on coaching where if I was ever in that position, I'm going after upside, right? I want more of a boom or bust, and that's my take on it. And then it goes back to like even Ian Book playing quarterback. It's like we know he's not going to really turn the ball over, but is he going to create any big plays? No. Well, I'd just as soon play conservative versus swinging for the fence. I think that's going to change in the Freeman era.
Going back to Carr.
CJ,
Yeah. Um I mean, I've got this question just a couple times in this week, today really. Carr or Angeli? Mike, you love Steve Angeli. You think Carr's better? I think Carr's a better prospect. And it doesn't pain me to say that because
say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so.
It ain't so.
What makes you say that, Mike? What makes you say that? I agree, obviously. I'm kidding, but what makes you
Yeah,
say that?
I think you see that there's a more clear upside. Angeli, it's a little bit more of a, he didn't get to throw that much in high school and this, that, I feel like, I don't think I'm making excuses, but I just think it's more obvious on Carr's sophomore tape that he's farther along than Angeli was as a sophomore, which, he was a, you know, kind of like a wildcat, package quarterback as a sophomore because they had a senior returning starter at Bergen Catholic that year, and they were going to bench him. But I just think Carr checks every single box, whereas Angeli, some of them aren't checks. We just don't know about them. We just don't know as much. We haven't seen as much of him throwing the football down the field as we've seen Carr. Like the dude just he throws really well on the run. Like I think he's a better athlete than Angeli. I love Angeli's mechanics. That's one of my just how easy he throws the football and his feet. Carr's got quicker feet. I think Carr's got a quicker motion, I should say. They're about the same size. Angeli's a little bit thicker, but I just think Carr's probably got a stronger arm already. I mean, but question to you is, he seems to have it all. Like he seems to check every single box, like the mobility, the bloodlines, the mechanics, the arm strength, the accuracy is just superb. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think
Again,
he
it's
has
a
the
highlight
change.
tape. He threw some picks last year, so we don't get to see the bad. It's a highlight tape. So, but still, is there anything that you notice on there?
But that goes back. So even if he does make a few mistakes and does have a few picks, like so be it. That's part of playing the position, right? We're looking for upside. You're looking to take the training wheels off and let your athletes go compete. So yeah, I think he does have the tangible things in terms of size. He's got a real easy stroke. He has great feet, eyes downfield. I think he has intangibles. I've heard reports where when he's in these camp type environments that the other quarterbacks who are competing for these scholarships with him tend to follow him and kind of glom on, which you love to hear. I would say the one missing element to CJ is he's not like showy, right? He seems like a very humble type personalities. Where like if you look at DJ Ugliunlie, did I get that right?
It was close enough. Say it with confidence.
DJ at Clemson, like there's more of an aura about him. He's a little bit more showy, right? There's just more shit to him. Whereas CJ's like, hey man, I'm just kind of a 5-star kid. I'm probably a great son, great student, great brother, etc.
Does this
Leader
matter?
in the
Like,
community.
why does this matter?
Because I think this is the second time I've used the word sexy on the podcast, but in terms of like the recruiting world
Like
and
about
the
recruits, you
media
weirdo.
coverage and stuff, I don't think he's going to be he doesn't have the hair like Trevor Lawrence, doesn't have like the rocket arm. He's just he's just not showy. If I was gonna, and it's not even a slight at all. But I'm just looking at it from a fan's
So, all
perspective,
right, let me ask you a question.
which ultimately Mike makes him a perfect fit for a program like a Notre Dame. Ultimately, but if you were gonna say, "Gosh, I wish there was a little bit more celebrity ish aspect to him." Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Is it more like he's a B plus in every area, but not an A and A plus in one area? Like, is that like I don't get what him having long hair is going to do for him as a quarterback. Like, what is the perception of him being called Sunshine going to do for anything?
Well, why did Joe Theismann change his name from Joe Theismann to Joe Theismann? Because it rhymed with Heisman. Like there is an element to that. There absolutely is an element to that. In terms of like media coverage, there's just if somebody was like, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be in a Subway commercial if he's not, drop dead handsome? No, like there's
Well,
something to that, right?
CJ Carr's last name's Carr. The first time he comes out on the field, you know how the NBC broadcast is going to just eat that up and tell that story. I think that's something that the majority of Notre Dame fans that I know, public enemy number one is Michigan. And Carr's grandfather's Lloyd Carr. His dad was a quarterback in Michigan. His mom graduated from Michigan. His mom's dad was a safety at Michigan, like All-American safety in Michigan. I mean, I think that is, that shit to him is that he picked Notre Dame over those bloodlines before his junior year of high school. And Saline,
Hmm.
Michigan is like 20 minutes from the big house. I wouldn't be surprised if he like is in like basically in Ann Arbor and just commutes to Saline. Like, I mean, he I don't know. I think that is
Again,
that.
it's not a slight, but in terms of like, if you're okay, we got our first 5-star quarterback in decades, and he's a humble, quiet kid. On one hand, it's a great thing, but on the other hand, as a fan, I'm like, man, not that I want him to go get like a full tattoo sleeve or something, but like, what else can he add in terms of like, if I was his PR agent or his marketing guy, how could I like boost his level of celebrity? I'm
But
just saying, like Mac Jones, if it, like Tua Tagovailoa, if his name wasn't Tua Tagovailoa, would we think anything of him? No, like he's marketable. Mac Jones isn't marketable, so how can we like? Is that am I making any
yeah,
sense?
you do,
You
but I just
gotta
don't get what difference does it make? I mean, Mac Jones is going
ultimately
to win more games than my Dolphins this
Mike
year.
in the win loss column, it makes no difference. But I'm saying in terms of like the ascendance of Notre Dame's football program, if CJ Carr is going to be the face of it, what else can we add to like his character in the like the might would be legend of him? We'll see how it unfolds.
That his last name's Carr.
Fair?
I think that's it. I get what you're saying, but I mean, what do you think Dante Moore's would be? If he would,
See?
is he that?
Well, Dante Moore, even the way his style of play is like super reminiscent of Pat Mahomes. He's more fun to
Got the
watch.
hair.
He's got the hair. I'm just telling you, there's something to that. And I'm not even saying that like the celebrity thing is a good thing, but I just think it'd be fun in terms of like making Notre Dame, continuing to make Notre Dame more and more and more relevant is all.
You know what's
The
one of my
same way, Mike, let me give you a nice case study.
okay.
Our boy Rocco Spindler. If Rocco Spindler, and we like Rocco, if Rocco didn't look the way that he looked, which we've talked about, I mean he just looks the part. If football doesn't work out, he can go be an extra in every mob movie till the end of time. He has that look, and his name's Rocco. So like people, and we talked about this. I think Notre Dame fandom is looking for Rocco partially based off of his look and his name. If his name was Jeff Smith, he wouldn't get as much adulation from people. You know that's true. So if we look at that as a case study, apply that to CJ Carr. That's the argument I'm trying to make.
I don't know how the hell Rocco Spindler hasn't gotten an
I'm gonna
NIL
get
deal so
roasted.
far.
I'm gonna get roasted. I'm gonna get roasted for even
No,
bringing this up.
no, I'm good with it. I'm fine with it. I like it. What are you drinking?
This is H2O.
Yeah, I'm drinking sparkling water. Look, man, I had somebody drop in the comments. So what are you drinking with your wife out of town? I I mean, I'm trying not to balloon up too much, so I'm trying to just all my calorie intake be food and not add in too many extra calories. Now, have I? Yes. But not this week, man. This has been a week. When Mike texted me about doing the show, I was like, I could use that hour to chill, but it's been crazy. It's been crazy. I mean, I've interviewed like 15 kids and like maybe close to 20 in the past 2 days or something. Trying to write all those articles up is tough. But the YouTube's fun. But yeah, wrapping up this conversation, like yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying. It's as a fan, it's something you want. Like, oh, we finally got this guy, this caliber of talent. Let's, you know, have just some big name, right? Some big kind of personality or to lead the program.
And
But I think Carr's is that he fits Notre Dame and he picked Notre Dame over Michigan in his bloodlines. I think that's a very marketable and real thing.
fair enough.
My computer froze. Are we good on your end, Mike?
I
Stream's
can
good.
hear you. You look as good as ever. I can hear you. I can see you. We're
All
good.
right. Well, cool. Mike. So, and if something happens, just shoot me a text, Mike. We had a comment here about I can't pop it up on the screen because my computer's frozen. Chris Ayers says, has anybody seen the junior tape from Dante Moore and the sophomore tape from CJ Carr? Which is more impressive? You'd kind of have to go off the top of your head there, Mike, but I would pop on Dante film, but again, my computer's frozen. Any thoughts on comparing the two, Mike?
I would say that Dante's film is more exciting, but I think just because there's a lot more backyard football kind of weaved into there. But I think, and I've talked about that, I've called for that in terms of Notre Dame's offense, specifically with Tyler Buckner. And I do think in some of these big games where you've got high level athletes across the board, you do need to be able to mix in a little bit of backyard football from the quarterback position. Now, I think that CJ Carr's brand of football is how you win games, traditionally speaking. Eyes downfield, accurate, smart decision maker, good enough athleticism. But Dante Moore is the type of kid that's going to throw like a pass behind his back, and you're going to see it on Sports Center throughout the entirety of a college football season. You're not going to get that from CJ Carr, but I think that CJ's brand of football over the history of the game is how you win. I think Dante's is more exciting, but gun to my head, I'd prefer CJ as somebody that knows a little bit about football in terms of
E-
the style of play. The
Even with
style of play.
even without the hair.
I want to. Well, again, he's a young kid, but I want to see. I hope that we can. I hope to see more of his personality um, as time goes on.
All right. How about we try to get him on the show? Maybe I'll try to get him on the show tomorrow night or something. He's a great kid, man. He's a great kid.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He
I
seems like
think
a
you guys will like hearing
fantastic
from
kid.
him. All right, so update on my end. I on my second monitor over here, I'm watching the stream. It's like what you guys see is like 15 seconds or so delayed. I accidentally, but like my feed on my system that I stream is totally frozen. So I accidentally moved Mike's box. So you're all jacked up, Mike. But that's okay. We'll just close your eyes, I guess, people. So moving on, Mike.
Nothing to see here. Nothing to
Yeah,
see here.
I guess, but you guys can see me, so I guess I just my computer's frozen, or my program's frozen, I should say. You wanted to talk about NIL. What did you want to talk about with NIL, Mike? What was on your mind for that?
Um, Two things, maybe three things. What is it going to do to a locker room? Because this is still a team sport, and it is the team sport of all team sports. That's one piece. You look at it as an investor. That's another interesting layer to it. So I'll use that case study of that tight end that I worked with that became the number one tight end, Fedoni, who ended up going to the Huskers, number one
Yep.
player in the country. So let's say, Mike, you and I are diehard Husker fans, and we throw money into the pot to sign Fedoni, and then he's been injured for a couple years. So there's negative return on our investment. That's a bad investment. People that have boosters, specifically, Mike, that have funds, excess funds that they can throw into an NIL deal, they're smart people. They're successful people. They didn't get to where they're at making bad investments. We won't know what this is going to turn into until we get 2, 3 years down the road. But if you're paying these quarterbacks hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, and they don't pan out, you're going to lose those investors. It's just the way it is. So that's going to be a thing. Um, because like unless the kid ends up being the first pick overall, win a national championship, he's a Heisman contender. People aren't going to be satisfied. Mike, you know as well as anybody the nature of college football fandom, right? I mean, it's extreme. Do you mean to tell me I threw 50 grand into this pot to sign this quarterback and he threw 3 picks against our rival? that same booster should never and is highly unlikely to ever throw money back into the pot. And then really just really it's just a locker room element where I've been here grinding. It's my year to win a starting job. This kid comes in and now he's getting paid $200,000. He pulls up driving a G wagon or whatever is the case. That is not good for a locker room. And I think some of these programs have great culture. I think most programs just kind of have a meh culture. And I think for most programs, it's really going to hurt the locker room dynamic.
Okay.
I really, truly do. And I mean, that's when you go back to like the NFL, like when Matt Stafford was drafted #1 overall, I think he was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL as a rookie, hadn't even played a game yet. So that's why they kind of restructured the CBA. Something like that's got to come down the pipeline. And then the pressure on these kids, like, oh, like the quarterback from Tennessee is the prime example for me. He can't live up to that hype. He can't. Does he care? Maybe he doesn't care. He's got $2 million in the bank, right? I mean, if he's smart with it, I think another thing that's missing with this shit show that the end. I mean, this has been entirely not even mismanaged; it's unmanaged by the NCAA. From a recruiting aspect, is Notre Dame doing something to talk about personal finance investment with these young kids? I mean, if an 18-year-old's given $250,000, they could be well on their way if the school helps them manage that money. Is there an element to that? Is that something that the NCAA is thinking about, these individual programs are thinking about? So that's where I'm at. But my main focus is just in some of these locker rooms, if you've got kids, there's haves and have nots from a financial perspective, it could get messy.
Sure.
Especially with the kids, the haves, financially speaking, the kids that are getting NIL deals, if they don't pan out, it's going to get messy. Now, do you have to play them? Do you have to play them to keep your boosters happy? Man, it could get messy.
So what, NIL's been a thing for a year now? I want to say it was July 1st or June 1st of last year. It doesn't seem like it's gotten too messy in the first year in terms of this. I mean, if like Bryce Young was making $1 million or whatever, and that pissed off the Alabama locker room, you think something on that would, leak and be a major story. But it just seems like it's going to get worse and worse and worse before it gets better, right, Mike?
I do. Well, and again, Bryce Young won a Heisman and got to a national championship. So
And it's
that's
not a
probably not the best,
recruit.
not the best example, Mike, but I get it. I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I do think it's gonna get messy. And then how does that correlate to Notre Dame football? We will give Coach Kelly credit for building that culture of that brotherhood here at ND. But my phone's about to die, brother. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just, this is great production we have.
Hey, dude, this is a high dollar production, man, if anything. So, but I think the way that Notre Dame's kind of going about the NIL deal with that kind of community service angle, I I think it's going to have the opposite effect. You see what these kids are doing as far as the community service, and they're doing it kind of from a team perspective. They're going out there in groups, so then not only are you bonding in the weight room, conditioning workouts, etc. You're going out into the community, and it's just more of the same. So I think all of that NIL messiness, the potential for it at other programs, I think that only strengthens Notre Dame's position. Not to mention the fact that as we speak, we have the #1 recruiting class in the country. Again, doing it the right way.
Yeah, I hear stuff all the time. As I'm talking right now, I'm like, what do I want to say on this? Because I'm not writing an article where I can pick my words very carefully and backspace. It's definitely NIL. Oh, we lost Mike. I guess this thing died. But like NIL money is, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get him back on because my computer's froze up. But like NIL money in recruiting, it's very much. Yeah, all right, we got him back. It's a real thing. All right, let's see if this works.
Come on, get in here. There we are.
I was very nervous, Mike. because my computer froze. I was able to drag things from this monitor to my second monitor over here. So that's why I keep looking over here, because this is where I can actually see it. Did you get your
No,
phone
you're
plugged in?
no, it's charging. We're good. I had a bad outlet. So
So what I was saying was that, like, I have, like, when I'm talking to maybe a parent or recruit, be like, what are you thinking about this? And it's NIL it's a major factor. Maybe not for all kids, but your high end kids, it's like, I've definitely heard, we really like Notre Dame, but NIL, like, we want to be bought, essentially, without saying those words. So from what you're saying, Mike, it sounds like it, like Notre Dame, like you said, Notre Dame's got the number one class right now per the 2023 on 3 consensus ranking. So everything's fine right now. So these other programs, could it be a little bit of fool's gold with NIL and recruiting, that they're buying some players right now, but it might screw up their team for the long run, whereas Notre Dame is kind of just going to steady their way past this, and hopefully the NCAA gets their head out of their arse and helps clean this up? What do you think?
yeah, I would tend to agree. Notre Dame's just gonna keep doing what you're doing. There's another thing I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
Maybe you're familiar with this, but like if you were an NFL GM or if you were an NFL head coach and you had a top 10 pick in the draft, forget traits, athletic traits, measurables, height, weight, speed, film, you name it, ability. What else matters to those guys? Like in terms of, I'm a GM and I'm going to pick from a handful of guys with my first pick overall. What does that GM and what does that head coach want to know about said player? Do you know? It's almost the most important thing.
If you're asking me a rhetorical question, I don't know, because I was paying attention to something else. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You got to know, does a kid love football,
Okay, yeah.
right? I'm about to hand over $25 million, whatever it is. Does he love football? So that's another element to this. So not everybody that plays football loves football. And if you're a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid and you're now worth $500,000, you're going to find out real freaking quick how many of these kids love football and how many kids don't. And that goes back to these would-be investors that they're going to continue to throw money at it. And then furthermore, Mike, push it out. So Texas A&M may be building their recruiting culture and their recruiting approach around NIL. And if some of these kids, these high dollar kids don't pan out, they're going to have to really shift strategies in terms of how they go about recruiting, right?
Sure.
Is it going to be sustainable? So again, if this is the third reason, Mike, talking today, it's the third reason why you'd root for Notre Dame. We're not buying kids.
Yeah, they're not.
Anyway,
Which, it's crazy if Notre Dame does sign a top 5 class and they don't buy kids. That's insane.
it's like, yeah, it's I mean, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, what NIL is crazy, and how quickly it took hold. But for Notre Dame to keep it at arm's length, stay the course, and still find success recruiting, and hopefully it translates to the field, it's remarkable, man. It is.
What else is on your mind, Goolsby?
Oh, we could talk about a couple of these recruits.
Let's see if I can get this to work. That's the question.
Oh,
All
it's
right.
all right if you don't.
No, I think I can.
If you
All right.
can't,
So here's a player that I think Notre Dame will end up with
yeah, let's get into that.
in their 2023 class. Shift along to a different subject here. St. Louis DeSmet, 4-star cornerback Christian Gray. If you follow my coverage at blueandgold.com, you've been reading and hearing about this young man a ton. Officially visited this past weekend. To me, he's one of the more key players for the Irish in this class because of Notre Dame's woes at cornerback. So if they do land him, then this is a pretty big deal. So let's pop on this is some of his junior tape, Mike. This is your first time watching him. Just curious to kind of just give us your live play-by-play insights on him.
Very much reminds me of Avante Dickerson, who I mentioned, he was a 2021 kid
Mm-hmm.
who I think was also the seventh ranked corner nationally. Looks a lot like him on film. A little bit on the smaller side, great feet. I assume he's probably got great top end speed.
Yep,
That's a
about four.
great play.
He ran a 4.4 at Ohio State twice going in his junior season.
Yeah. Yeah, and Avante ran a 4.39 at that same camp, at an Ohio State camp. Um, the type of kid where the technique's a little bit rough, plays a little bit high. Not the type of kid you want to overcoach in just terms of letting his ability kind of take over, but it's absolutely a position in need. And this is, folks, this is me watching this for the first time. Probably a field corner to me.
Yeah, I agree.
This is the type of kid at a high school level that can squat on a lot of routes because he's not worried about somebody beating him deep. Now that's a big receiver that he went up against and competed for the ball. Yeah, he's a nice player, nice and
Super.
long. Again, not the biggest kid, but
He is
in
long.
terms of what you're looking for in a corner, he's got it.
He's got some twitch to him too. I've seen him in person a couple times.
Absolutely.
That's part of him. You know, he's just. I mean, Notre Dame. Man, I was watching or Tim Hyde and I recorded a video recently, a live show a while back, and we were going through corners. History of corner recruiting at Notre Dame in the past 10 years. It was really bad, Mike. I mean, not just really. I was stunned, and you know me, Mr. Glass Half Full, Mr. Optimistic on stuff. I mean, I was yuck.
I don't know what it is. I don't know why this is where when you're talking about elite talent on the edges, be it the receiver position or the defensive back, specifically corner position, those kids don't tend to be high academic kids. Like you're always going to be able to find a high academic offensive lineman. There's just not a lot of them for whatever reason.
All right,
Um,
let me throw a theory.
so I think
This is
that might explain the.
this is some Colin Cowherd for you,
Oh,
right?
here
So,
we go.
Col-
Yes, Mike.
so Colin will often, say things like, the quarterback's the most confident kid, he's the most good-looking kid, right? Gets picked first for kickball, like
Right.
all this kind of stuff. I mean, the offensive lineman's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more awkward, and doesn't get invited to the hangouts and the parties and just kind of studies more. And is just, offensive linemen typically keep more to themselves and are not the coolest kids in town.
They always marry their first girlfriend traditionally. That's
I
another
think
thing to add in there.
the offensive linemen, I think they come around and then they end up really cool, right? But I think that might be part of it, that they're very focused. And if you're a good looking kid who is super duper popular and you can just kind of coast through everything, then maybe your grades suffer. I don't know. That's my Colin Cowherd take.
I don't know what it is. I don't know why that is the case, but I do believe that is the case. That it's hard to recruit, it's hard to find. Because I was having this conversation with a kid I just started working with from a training aspect, and he's a higher end kid, and he has the grades. He's got like a 3.4 GPA, and he's going into his junior year. He's a receiver, and I'm telling him he's got the measurables, length, speed, and I'm like, dude, if you can get that to like a 3.5, 3.6, um, you're going to be recruited by some of these the Boston College, the Notre Dames, the Northwesterns, the Vanderbilts, the Stanfords, where those schools are really going to be on you because there's just not a lot of high academic kid that play those positions. So in that regard, use football as a tool to get into some of these schools. So yeah, I like Christian Gray. He's probably a must-have at that position for us. We got to put a lot of kids in that room. I do think some of the personality types that we brought in recent recruiting classes are kids that want to compete, kids that are going to chirp a little bit. So I think the more bodies we can get in that room that are capable, you sprinkle in a little bit of that competitive element, and I think all ships will rise with that tide in that room.
We've had a couple comments about your tan. What's going on, Mike? Why are you so tan?
Got a pool, dude. Summertime, man. I was out there sipping beers before we jumped on here. Parents are in town. They wouldn't come on the podcast. I asked them to, but
Your parents? That's good
no, yeah, they
That's good
wouldn't.
television.
Yeah, it could be. I'm sure they've got some recruiting stories and stuff to tell, but no, just enjoying a Nebraska summer, Mike.
How long
Getting
have you
some
lived in
sun. You got
Omaha?
come again?
How long have you lived in Omaha?
I think like 5 years, roughly.
Do you like it?
I do like it. Most of the Midwest is very much the same in terms of things to do, et cetera, et cetera. I wish there was some more natural beauty here, more water, more mountains or whatever. But the community of Omaha and the people of Nebraska, I could not ask for more in terms of networking and people trying to help one another out. It's been a great experience. Do you have any, what are you smiling
Drunk
at?
Vigo says Singer needs to hang out at Goolsby's pool. Yeah, I don't know. If Notre Dame recruits a kid to Omaha, I will gladly go out there and tape one of these live together. That'd be awesome.
That'd
Um,
be great. You got any other questions over there?
yeah,
Any submissions?
Charlie Weiss Charlie Weiss's last belt loop asks you if you're going to the College World Series.
I'm out of town until Sunday for work. So yeah, I probably won't go to a game, but I will head downtown and just kind of soak in the vibe. It ends up being kind of a street fest. And I did throw up on the message board. I was like, I would love to help try and coordinate a little bit of a meetup
That'd be
with
sweet.
some blue and gold subscribers that make their way to town. I'm not going to host a pool party per se, but yeah, it'd be nice to meet some people. Yeah, I'll probably make my way down there.
Last comment. Your neighbors have a great lawn, from Chris. I think that neighbor did pop on one of our shows and said that recently, right? You remember that?
Yeah, mine might be nicer, but yeah, I get a lot of
Can't
shit.
see.
It's like, well, is Goolsby broadcasting from like the back of a semi truck or whatever? It's like, no, this is like a would-be attic that we turned into an office. So I'm way up here, hence the low window. It's very warm in here, by the way, Mike. I'm like sweating as I'm talking to you.
All right. Well, technical difficulties aside, it was a fun show. So, any closing thoughts, Mr. Goolsby?
No, I apologize that there's been such a long window of time, but I am genuinely looking forward to the season. And
That'd be fun.
dude, this is the most optimistic that I've been as a Notre Dame football alum, Notre Dame football fan in a
For
long time.
for
And
the
I
future,
mean,
not about just this season, though, right?
yeah, and it's all based off of Coach Freeman. To me, he hasn't really taken any missteps. I just feel like, gosh, not that he walks on water, but I just feel like he's making
Everything,
all the right moves. Um,
everything.
and specifically, like, I look forward to Mike if we're still doing this 2, 3 years down the road. How many times have we gotten on one of these pods after a loss in a big game, and it's the same old story. We're talking about lack of talent on the edges, lack of size in the middle of the defense. It's the same thing over and over and over again. So I'm excited to see what Coach Reese's offense looks like without Brian Kelly looking over his shoulder. And I think like Marcus Freeman specifically is targeting positions of need where the biggest gaps were versus Alabama and Ohio State, at Clemson, you name it. Like I think we're fixing that so that 2, 3 years down the line after these big games, we're going to be having a different conversation.
Good stuff. All right, Mr. Goolsby.
Cool.
It's fun, man.
All right, Mr. Singer.
All right,
Till
Notre
next
Dame
time.
fans, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, blueandgold.com. As Goolsby said, he goes on there. He's on the message board. He'll talk with you. Throw up a thread every once in a
I'm more
while.
of a lurker. I kind of lurk, you know.
But hey, you're reading, so if someone asks you a question, you might see it. Um, so yeah, go to the loose emoji message board. Rest in peace to the goat. And all right, Notre Dame fans, we'll see if I can sign this thing off with my technical difficulties. We'll catch you guys
All
next
right,
time.
Michael.